we have some breaking news coming in. We're getting news of a major escalation in rhetoric around the Iran crisis as US President Donald Trump has now reportedly said that Iran could face Venezuela-style action, while also claiming NATO and the United Kingdom may join operations in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has also said that NATO allies want to assist in securing the waterway, with reports suggesting that the UK and other countries could now deploy minesweepers as part of the effort. The remarks also mark an expansion of the scope of the potential international involvement as tensions continue to rise over maritime security and also the Iran policy in the Gulf region. So this is the latest statement that is coming in from Donald Trump, where he not only warns of a Venezuela-style action in Iran, but he's also making a rather interesting claim where he says that the NATO and the United Kingdom are actually interested in joining the Hormuz operation. Now remember, earlier during the course of the war, in fact, while Donald Trump had appealed to his NATO allies, he did not get any kind of positive response from the NATO allies, most of whom distanced from the war that Donald Trump had kick-started. But now Donald Trump is claiming that the NATO allies want to join them in the cleanup operation. In fact, we have Rishabh who's joining us on the phone line to give us more details. Rishabh, two very interesting points being made here by Donald Trump. One, of course, is the Venezuela-style action that he's teasing in Iran. And then, of course, the other interesting point where he says that the NATO allies actually now want to step in and help the United States clean up the Strait of Hormuz. How much should we believe from this statement?
Well, that depends, Rohit. That's what NATO allies would say. Remember, given that it is morning in the United States now and Donald Trump has just woken up on a Sunday morning, we also need to understand that it is dark already in most of the Europe and Asia, and more details would come in from the NATO allies tomorrow morning, Monday, when they wake up. And that's when we will get to know how much of gravity is there when it comes to the claims that is being made that NATO allies wants to join in to clear Strait of Hormuz. Clearing Strait of Hormuz till yesterday was very clean because there was a ceasefire in place and negotiations were on. Now that negotiations have failed, the negotiators have gone back to their respective capitals. One would only see how things unfold in the next 24 hours before commenting on whether they want to be part of opening of Strait of Hormuz, because remember, the negotiations have failed between US and Iran. That unleashes Israel to continue the war. What Israel does overnight tonight would also mean a lot of what happens tomorrow morning and how things unfold. A. B, when it comes to the naval blockade, we need to understand Venezuela was different. Iran is different. Venezuela does not have that much. There was a sanction in Venezuela, a naval blockade in Venezuela did not in a way, affected the supply chain, energy supply chain worldwide. A naval blockade on Strait of Hormuz by US and a blockade that is already in place by Iran would further choke the energy supply chains, and that would be a problem.
Right, absolutely. So it remains to be seen now how the NATO allies actually respond to Donald Trump's latest offer. Donald Trump, of course, is claiming that NATO is ready to help them, but whether or not the NATO actually positively responds to what Donald Trump has said remains to be seen. But thank you, Rishabh, for joining us on the broadcast and giving us those details. And speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, of course, we also, questions are being raised, like I said, about, the presence of the United States. Now, the United States, of course, has several American military bases in many of these, in many of the countries in the Middle East, of course, some of them being in Jordan, which were also attacked, and several other countries like Saudi Arabia as well, which had seen attacks. And then you had the attacks that were launched by Iran also on the US airbase in Bahrain and then in Iraq as well. In Kuwait, also, airstrikes were launched by Iran against the United States, and then in Qatar as well, and the United Arab Emirates, where we saw attacks against American military infrastructure being launched by the Iranians. But the problem here now is it's not just the military installations of Americans over here. Iran is now, or rather America is now looking to also step in here around the Strait of Hormuz and try to sort out the situation here, because they claim that they are now going to demine the Strait of Hormuz. So even as you have all of these American installations, military installations that were already attacked by Iran, and at the moment, Iran, of course, is not backing down. They're showing no signs of slowing down. But with that being said, the Strait of Hormuz is now another place where the Americans could step in, which is why it remains to be seen now how Iran responds to this as well.